Hey everyone, it's Horror Free for All, and today I'm bringing you a brand new horror anthology series to do rankings of. And I actually watched this a few months ago, and I'm playing catch up with this, and it's going to be on Monsters Season 1. Now, I saw Monsters Season 1 on Tubi, and I knew that Monsters was pretty much a soft continuation of Tales from the Dark Side. And also, Tales from the Dark Side itself was kind of like getting a spiritual creep show television series back in the 80s, because George Romero and the production team involved with the first creep show and eventually the second creep show wanted to do a television show. They couldn't really squeeze the rights where they could with the creep show IP, so they settled with Tales from the Dark Side, and it lasted 4 seasons. And then, of course, Monsters went on all the way up until about 1990 with its own 3-season run as well. So in a lot of ways, I see fans referring to Monsters pretty much just a soft continuation with some mild tweaks of Tales from the Dark Side. And after watching this season a few months ago, I'm sorry I didn't make a video on this. I meant to, but I got kind of sidetracked with a few things. And I felt like I would come back to it at a certain point, and now I'm finally doing it. Basing off my memory of watching it, I thought that it was pretty much carrying the steam from seasons 3 and 4 from Tales from the Dark Side, which were my 2 favorite seasons from that show. And this feels like it's pretty much continuing it on, just abandoning the wannabe Twilight Zone aspect that Dark Side had. And I don't mean to throw shade on that show, because I really came out to enjoy it. I wouldn't say I'm like a massive fan of it, but I did love a lot that was in there. Here, it's pretty much the same deal. The production company still has those snags and those similar issues that they had with Dark Side, but this show is definitely leaning more into Monster of the Week and Monster Schlock type stuff, which I ironically kind of enjoy more. And those were always my favorite stories from Dark Side. So yeah, go figure. But anyways, we have a lot of episodes to cover because this first season is 24 episodes. There's a lot to cover. And so let's get into it. So I have different ranking categories I put episodes in. Starting from the bottom, we have awful, and then a step up from that is bad, and then it goes to meh, okay, decent, good, very good, great, and then the illustrious perfect. Now, spoiler alert, every category got an entry, at least an asterisk or a tally in the column minus perfect. Perfect did not have any episodes, but one did come very close, and that's going to be my number 1. But there's at least one in every other category, so that means there is one awful, at least one bad, and so on and so on. So, without further ado, let's get into it. What is the worst episode, the only awful episode from Season 1 from Monsters, in my opinion? Well, it goes to episode 16, Their Divided Self. It was written by Michael Bishop, and I gave this a 1.25 out of 5 stars. Now, the only reason why I did not give this episode a flat 1 out of 5 stars was the crazy final 5 minutes of this episode. It goes kind of weird and entertaining, but unfortunately, that's pretty much the only saving grace to it. And it's not even changing what the plot was setting up or adjusting characters. It was just ridiculous for the sake of being ridiculous, and I mildly enjoyed it, but it does not save everything else before it. This episode, in my opinion, belongs in the worst of the worst from Tales from the Dark Side, honestly. I don't see why they adapted this in this show. This kind of feels like this was a leftover idea that they wanted to make in Dark Side, but somebody had the bright idea to not make it, and then they just dumped it off here because they needed an episode to fill in, at least as a filler episode for this season. This episode is god-awful. The concept is a pair of conjoined twins. They're fraternal twins. They have polar opposite personalities, and they don't ever shut the fuck up. They have this psychiatrist that's brought to them because they are actually a famous pair of Siamese twins, but recently they've kind of been off the rocker and they haven't been able to work together. And one of the conjoined twins' girlfriend had recruited the psychiatrist to come talk with him. And legit, the whole fucking episode is just them bantering and making cringe jokes. And I'm not fucking playing. It does not get good until it goes 0 to 100 in the final 5 minutes when these conjoined twins decide to do something to the psychiatrist. And I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, this is just a big old wet fart in the toilet bowl. It needed to be eviscerated from existence. I don't see why they thought this was a good idea. But then again, they're going for that corny camp stuff, and I could see maybe an argument for some people who like this episode for being that, but I hate it. I hate it with a burning passion. It's so far my least episode of the whole show. And then one notch above, and the only bad episode, which isn't saying much, at number 23, we have episode 21, All in a Day's Work. This was written by Michael Gallaglack, who actually was credited under a ghostwriting name of Maureen F. McHugh. I gave this a 1.75 out of 5 stars. So we're almost to that 2 out of 5 star rating, which is a low meh, but this is an upper bad. I like this episode for having Adrienne Barbeau. I thought her character acting was pretty well done. And I thought that the idea was kind of intriguing to an extent. But the execution falls flat. Some other characters have really shitty acting. And the concept just goes way overboard into the hokiness for my taste. So the concept is this. This man that lives in this apartment building thinks he sees a doppelganger that's going around doing these things and kind of acting strangely around him whenever he encounters him. So he enlists the help of this neighbor woman who may or may not be into witchcraft and has her own young child. And she decides that the only way to get rid of the doppelganger is to enlist the help of some demons. So she summons like 1 or 2 demons, and the whole story is the demon just fucking around, pretty much doing nothing. And they get this bright idea to summon the doppelganger into the apartment room, and shit goes fucking south pretty quick, and nothing seems to make really logical, coherent sense involving the doppelganger and the connection to these demons. And the execution, how bad these effects look and how bad the climax is handled is so bad that it just tanked all likability. It would have been probably an upper meh or maybe even a low okay episode, but it just fumbled it so hard. I haven't seen an episode have a decent concept but just ruin it like this. Not even in Tales from the Dark Side all that much. Most of the time that those good concept ones will land at least in the meh or okay, but this one just failed. So that's why it's here at number 23. Now we're moving up to the meh, slightly above these bottom 2 here. At number 22 overall is actually episode 22, Satan in the Suburbs. This was written by Barbara Boatner, and I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. This is another one of those should have been in Tales from the Dark Side episodes. Seems like this one was a reject as well. They just picked it out of the reject pile and just said, hey, we'll continue on and adapt these. In a lot of ways, a lot of the meh episodes from Tales from the Dark Side kind of show its ugly head in this. You have a concept with a woman who's a struggling writer, has a kid. She's like a single mom. She decides that maybe she would entertain making a deal with the devil to get some success. And she actually gets to meet Satan himself, who wants her to write his autobiography. But the whole episode just goes very bizarre into the nonsensical camp shit where Satan and her maybe develop a love connection and she's slowly turning into a demon herself. It's just... It's more of a cute thing, but it's like when you get to the ending, it just feels like it putters off and just ends. It's one of those I wasted my time watching this type of things. Maybe some people might like it more. That's just where I'm at with it. Now, the other meh episode. I might upset a lot of you Monsters fans out there because this one seems to be a liked one from season 1. I think that this one is for sure what a lot of people think about the legacy, but I have the legacy kind of above this one in some significant fashion here. This one to me just did not do anything. And it's episode 5, My Zombie Lover. This was written by David Mish and Bill Burnett. And I gave this a 2.25 out of 5 stars. So this is an upper man, pushing okay. Look, it's not the concept that I don't like. You know, you have this teenage girl being left home alone once her parents and her younger brother go out to scavenge for supplies, and this post-apocalyptic world where zombies have kind of run amok and started to unleash hell on some humans. So she lives in a house that's boarded up, and she's left home alone, kind of like a damsel in distress. And she gets a knock at the door, and she sees that it's a guy that she might recognize, but he's a zombie. And the zombie's able to communicate with her, and basically the whole fucking episode is just them rekindling a former crush connection they had 6 months prior in school. And it goes into the whole corny thing with the zombie, you know, thinking about biting the chick, and the chick's like, no, you know, we have differences, but we can love each other without our difference. It's going like the Romeo Juliet cliche shit. And yeah, it goes very predictable. After a certain point, you know what's going to happen. But one thing, the reason why I gave this a 2.25 is the ending. Because that implication was fucked up in a good way. I like the ending to this episode. But yeah, just kind of a slog to me. Not really entertained. And I'm not really a fan of the concept. So that's why it's here. Now we're moving on to the okay episodes. I have 2 in this category. Some people would put this one at my number 20 slot way lower, but I have it here just because I thought the concept was fine enough, and I actually genuinely love like the final 7 to 8 minutes of it. And that is episode 11, Ruse Him Not. This was an episode written by Manly Wade Wellman. What a name. And I give this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Look, the main actress in this episode came from one of my favorite childhood movies ever, which was Problem Child 2. She played LaWanda Dumore. I never remember her name. She was also the mom of a character from Seventh Heavens. I think it was Matt. His wife's mom was played by her as well. I thought she did a great job here. And the concept with the monster being in a basement, it's been done before, but the monster design in this, I think, was one of the better monsters designs they've done in the show. The concept was okay, and that's kind of why I put it here. And the execution, the only reason why it's this low was it was very fucking boring at points. But you have this painter who has shacked herself up in this old house that may or may not be tied to an old legend that she hears from locals coming by to visit her and letting her know about what's going on. There's a thing that happens with her dog down in the basement, and then another local, something happens to him, and her and this other local man that she's befriended witness this, and it builds up to a chaotic final act. But there's a lot of just dialogue and conversation between this woman and locals, and red herring stuff that doesn't really make fucking sense. So that's why it's here. The saving grace, like I said, is like the final act, the final 7 minutes of it. But yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda. It could have been better, but it is what it is. And then slightly above it, at number 19, we have episode 4, The Vampire Hunter. This was a story by Edith Swenson, who wrote my favorite Tales from the Dark Side episode, Family Reunion. And I give this a 2.75 out of 5 stars. Edith Swenson, I think, wrote 10 episodes from Tales from the Dark Side. And while her stories were kind of all over the place for me, this one also feels like this would have been in Dark Side as like a reject pile story. And it's fine for what it is. It just doesn't do anything new. The reason why I put it at a 2.75 was there was a twist I did not see coming. And when this show can actually pull that off, I'll give it props. And I wanted to put it at a 2.5, but I gave it this. But the concept is this vampire hunter, and I don't know what time period this story takes place in. I'm assuming like the 1800s. This vampire hunter is approached by this woman who said that her brother has had something terrible happen to him, and she thinks that he needs the help of a vampire hunter to kind of put him out of his misery, right? So she takes the vampire hunter to this dungeon place of sorts, and this is where the rest of the episode is spent. And it's revealed in like a coup d'etat rug pulled from under the audience, that the woman is not related to this man in like a sister brotherly way, but this is her lover. And the lover man, who has vampirism, has a connection with the vampire hunter from the past. And pretty much the whole episode is building on that front. And something happens to pretty much all the characters. And I don't want to spoil it or anything. But, you know, it's just a pretty straightforward vampire tale. And like I said, it just does nothing new with it. But I like the twist. I thought that was kind of cool. And I think there is a twist ending to this that I remember enjoying. I can't remember it off the top of my head because I did watch this a few months ago. So, yeah, that's just where I feel. And I wrote this list after I watched it. So I trust my judgment by putting it here at number 19. Now we're entering the category of decent. And I think I have about 5 episodes in this category. So these are starting to get more towards the positive skew for me. At number 18 overall, we have the actual first episode of the show, which was episode 1, The Fever Man. This was written by Neil Stevens, and I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. Now, for a first episode for this season, I think this is kind of weak. But I dig the concept of this, and I think there are some great executed ideas and some twists and turns in the story to make me give it some credit. But a lot of it is kind of tongue-in-cheek monster shenanigans. I don't like the look of the monster. I think it's fucking disgusting. I think this episode also has some very loose logic. Not a lot of things make sense. A lot of problems dealing with the idea, but there are some twists that I do think that work. So this little girl has been stricken with this fever, and her family has called over this doctor who, you know, there's a guy that they're, you know, a traditional medicine practice, right? He has a skeptic, right? And then there's this guy who is called the Fever Man, who has this knowledge of pulling out the fever or the illness out of somebody and manifesting it into a physical form. And of course, the plot runs where, you know, the Fever Man's down in this basement cellar with this little girl who has a fever and these skeptic doctors. And you kind of learn what the intentions are with the Fever Man, and maybe one of the doctors might be implied to take the role of the Fever Man once something happens to this gentleman. And you see the monster and all that. It's just hokey hijinks. But I still think this episode was able to capture a mood and an atmosphere that was kind of gripping, especially compared to the ones below it. It is kind of stale, like the Vampire Hunter, Ruse I'm Not. You know, this is a low budget show. They are condensing all these plots down in 21 minutes. But yeah, I just think this one is a bit of a step up from Vampire Hunter, so that's why I have it here. But it's at the bottom of decent for a reason. Now, at number 17, some of you out there might get really upset with what I'm about to say, but I think this one by far is the most overrated episode of this whole show, given, like, I guess, general fan reaction. And it's episode 10, Pillow Talk. This was written by David Odell. I give this one a 3 out of 5 stars as well. Look, I get the whole appeal of Pillow Talk, right? You have this cool concept, which I really do dig, about this man who has like an alien monster bed that he has to like bring victims. He brings these women to basically feed to his bed. And he pretty much gets outsmarted by this other woman who may or may not have one of the similar creatures. And you kind of spend the back half of the story kind of in knowing that this is going to happen. And you're like, okay, where's her monster? And then the twist happens, and you're like, oh, okay, that's her monster. Kind of thing. There's just not a lot to this one. There's not a lot. There's not a lot of subtext. I mean, I guess the main character does have some good moments in it, where he's kind of weighing the options of killing people and stuff, and keep feeding the monster. He's kind of contemplating on, you know, trying to walk away from it all. But yeah, it's just not really interesting to me on that level. Kind of boring in places. It is what it is. But I thought it was decent enough. At number 16 overall is another episode that I really wanted to like more, but it just kind of lost me after the halfway point. It's episode 14, Parents from Space. This was written by Peg Holler and Bob Schneider. And I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars as well. And then the reason why I put this one above Pillow Talk and The Fever Man, I do think that this one had the stronger first half and a better concept than them. So it's about this like little girl. She's in a foster family situation. She has older adults kind of watching over her, but they're abusive to her. And one day there's a noise outside, and she's tasked to go outside and, like, I guess, investigate what's going on. I think they're in farmland. She goes out to a barn, and she's discovered that these aliens have kind of crash landed on Earth and have shacked up in the barn. But there's like a revelation with these aliens who may or may not be these like rat species that have this technology where something may or may not happen to her foster parents, and these aliens can kind of become her new family. But once that happens and you see what happens inside of the home and all that, it just goes fucking really hokey for almost no reason. I think they could have leaned into more of the darker elements of this and made more stakes. You know, there was a child protective agent in the episode, kind of there to, I guess, have payoff near the end once she comes back to visit, because when she first came, she saw that maybe the home environment wasn't going to be the best. And now that these aliens may or may not have kind of assumed the role of being her new parents, what does that entail for her future and her happiness? Like I said, there's some really, really hokey shit about it that I just can't look past. Maybe in the future, I might be able to bump this up to like a 3.25, but as of now, it's going to sit here. And then at number 15, you might be shocked that it's made it this high for a lot of you, but it's actually episode 7, The Legacy. This was a story written by Robert Bloch, and I gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars. A lot of people dissed this episode, and I kind of get it. The final 10 minutes suck wholesale. I would say it has good parts, but the monster effects of what this character turns into is laughably dumb. And there's a lot of shit that makes absolutely zero fucking sense in terms of an explanation. The plot doesn't explain shit. But I like the idea here. You have a struggling writer who wants to write a story, or I guess a book, about this famous actor from the silent film era that's actually, like, in plot form, is taking inspiration from Lon Chaney, the man with 1,000 faces, or 1,000,000 faces, whatever they call them. And this writer is trying to figure out, you know, how this man was able to do these roles, and he has a girlfriend that is supporting him while he's staying in the home of this actor who has long since been dead. And he's kind of shunned her off so he can focus on his work, and he's kind of found the secret sauce maybe to how this actor was doing all this, but in the process, he kind of loses himself. Yeah, it's all over the place, I feel. I feel like you have a Shining type story going on, but I feel like because of a 21-minute time crunch, this episode pretty much suffered because they had to rush the final act. It had a decent pace for the first 2/3 of it. Then the final act, they're just barreling through shit. And yeah, that's where it lost me a little bit. But I dig this one a little more than the others, so that's why it's up this high. But I do have one more in the decent category that I like more. And at number 14, it goes to episode 17, Taps, which was written by Larry Charles and David Mish. I gave this a 3.25 out of 5 stars as well. Now, Taps was a very dark episode, and I wanted to love this one. It's a concept like this woman, she's ungrateful for what she has. She's in a contractual obligation with her coworker / lover that, you know, is kind of holding her back from breaking out into something bigger and making her own name for herself. So she gets this bright idea, you know, after going to some bouts of psychosis, to kill her partner, because the partner has pretty much revealed to her that he's not going to let her back out of the contract. So she kills him, and she goes off and has a life. But years later, an ironic, morbid twist of fate has brought her back to this old location where this man was last seen. And now she's kind of reliving some past trauma about it all. And she's being haunted by some things. Maybe the police is looking at her. But the kicker, or pun intended here, is that when she disposed of his body, she like had to cut him up to try to hide him. But there's a piece of him in the shape of a leg that may or may not be animate and fucking around in the story. Now, the reason why I have it this low, right? I can totally see the charm in this one. But then again, there's just not a lot of plot ties to kind of sell me. There's a lot of plot convenience, especially with some of the decision of law enforcement and some of the decisions that she makes in the first half of the episode don't really tie together all that much in terms, of logical consistency. And then I think the back half of the episode just, I wish it went a whole different direction. I think what happens with the leg thing and how it ends up, not my speed. Not my speed. It's too tongue-in-cheek for my taste. But, yeah, decent enough. That's why I have it here. So, now we're getting into the good, which I actually have 8 here. So we have a lot to cover. And at number 13 overall, we have episode 24, which was called La Strega. This was written by Richard Russo, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. This episode is famous because it has Linda Blair in it. She played Regan from The Exorcist, and she also starred in The Exorcist 2, The Heretic. And seeing her in this episode was quite a treat, I should say. Yeah, Linda Blair. But this story actually got me a little bit. It was kind of emotional, and I didn't really know where it was going to go. So essentially what happens in the plot is that this man approaches this shop run by this young woman played by Linda Blair. And the man's like, "You're La Strega. You put a curse on my mom. She died yesterday because you wouldn't give her back her ring 10 years prior. And you said that she was going to die, and she ended up dying. So now I'm here to get revenge on you. I want to kill you and get back my mother's ring so I can bury her with some peace." And the woman's like, "Okay, well, try to kill me." And the man's kind of caught off guard. And the woman pulls out her own gun and says, "Okay, well, I'll make you a proposition. I'm going to hold you hostage here for 2 weeks. You can see what kind of witch I am. And if you still want to kill me, I'll let you kill me." So the guy pretty much has to reluctantly agree to do this. Throughout the episode, he kind of, contemplates on killing her a few times, and you get the sense that, Linda Blair's character, the La Strega, is doing her own witchcraft to kind of mess around with the guy to see what he's going to do. And I don't want to spoil it or anything, but yeah, it was all right. It was actually a pretty good story. It's just not my speed, not what I'm looking for, but pretty well told. It had some issues, I guess, being kind of stale. The whole episode takes place in the shop and in the apartment and like the foyer upstairs above the building. And I kind of wish, there are some vague things I kind of wish the episode explained away, like with the shop owner's, mother being involved with the guy's mother. There's a lot of things that I have questions about, but other than that, I thought it was a good episode. At number 12, we have episode 19, Rain Dance, which was written by Michael Kimball, and I gave this also a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Rain Dance, from what I remember, you had this couple who was a bunch of assholes going around like picking up like native artifacts that are kind of worth a lot of money. I kind of forget what the twist is on this one, if I'm being honest, but I do remember there's a monster to come out that does some gnarly shit to them to get like some comeuppance, right? It's a classic creep show like tale, if I had to say anything. And oh yeah, I do remember something that the couple was like suffering the whole episode from what they did too. So yeah, it had kind of like a slasher feel in the back half of it. It was fun. It was fine. Just didn't really pop all that much. I'm just kind of struggling why. Maybe this one might be able to go lower or higher in the near future, but that's really all I have with this. So, yeah, Rain Dance, it was good. At number 11, oh boy, when I saw that Harvey Jacobs, Harvey Jacobs, he wrote some of the worst episodes from Tales from the Dark Side. When I saw he was writing this one, I was like, oh boy, let's see what he does. It goes to episode 3, New York Honey. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars as well. This is actually one of his better stories I've come across, ironically. I love the concept of this. So you had this a man and his wife have this really noisy neighbor that lives above them. And the guy is like irate. And the guy who plays the main character in this story, I have to give it to him. He hams it up, but in a good way. He's so over the top and it's ridiculous. But he goes up to this man who has like this really weird bee farm up in the apartment above him. And the guy's like, you know, complaining to him, and the guy's like, well, here, try some of this honey. And the man like has to have more of it. He's like, oh, this is the greatest honey I've ever had. He shows his wife, and he gets into like this blackmail Ponzi scheme where he's telling this man that, you know, you have to work for me and you have to keep making this honey and we're going to make a lot of money. Well, he ends up saying that, you know, he has another business proposition, and this attractive woman is going to be his new business partner. And straight up, the attractive woman comes downstairs to have dinner with this guy and his wife, and there's some weird, I don't know how to put this, cuckolding going on, and it's bizarre. But I love the monster twist near the end, and you kind of learn what happens. And yeah, it has a fun idea going for it. My only issue is there's so much non-realistic things that happen in this. And, you know, fiction is supposed to be escapism, but when you're talking about logic, when you're talking about, you know, explaining some things, you never really get a sense of the weight of the situation that the man in the apartment upstairs is going through. There's a lot of vagueness going on with what's going on with his apartment full of bees. And this woman just literally randomly appears in the plot, and it's implied to be what she is, but it's never really explained how she is the way she is. And I wanted to give this one a way higher rating, but I had to give it that just for kind of lazy writing on the writer's part. But still, one of the more entertaining episodes from this season. So, really enjoyed that one. All right, now we're in the top 10. And I still have a little more good left over before I move up to the upper echelon here. At number 10 overall, we have episode 15, The Mother Instinct. This was written by D. Emerson Smith, and I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Kind of similar to New York Honey, you have like an insect-themed story, but this one had a more darker element to it. This daughter of this woman, who is a paraplegic and widowed herself, has a fiance or husband that's an abusive piece of shit. And the daughter and her abusive fiance have come to the mom to basically, you know, ask her for some help because they have nowhere else to turn. And in turn, you know, while they're trying to like milk this woman who apparently is rich, she doesn't want to give them anything. And they come across this discovery while they're staying with her mother that she has these amazing plants that are just incredible, and it's going to be game-changing, and it boosts people's energy and all that. It can like cure paraplegism or, you know, paralysis, as demonstrated that the mother, you know, showed the fiance during an altercation, right? But there's a twist with it all because there's these insects powering it all, and it goes very schlocky very quick. And there's a comeuppance angle near the end. It's a satisfying story. I wish that they played a lot more into the mother's relationship with these two, and I kind of wish that the show wasn't a 21-minute time crunch, because this one could have been probably like a 30-minute episode to kind of flesh out some things, give some more backstory about how her and her husband discovered this miracle insect. You know, a lot of vagueness, but I thought it was good enough. All right, at number 9, This is another one of these really entertaining ones, but you gotta look past a lot of cringe a little bit. We have episode 6, Where's the Rest of Me? This was written by Richard Benner, and I gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Now we're getting up to the upper goods here. This one had Meatloaf playing, the bad guy, titular villain of the episode. And this one was just a hokey fun fest, okay? You have this doctor who kind of has his own villa in South America, and he's invited all of his famous rich cohorts that he's helped cure over the years. Like, he cured blindness, he did like a transplant of this NFL player's knee, some other things. And he's called them all to give him a business proposition because he's going to reveal the truth of how he was able to do all of this. And he shows them down in his basement of his villa that he's been taking body parts from a live specimen using this weird chemical that's been keeping it alive the whole time. And the people are like, oh yeah, we're going to be filthy rich off this. We're going to be able to change the medical game. But something happens because people were fooling around down there, and the chemicals get mixed up, and it kind of reanimates the dead body, or I guess not the dead body, but the comatose body. And now this person has come back to claim all the things that the doctor took off of him. And there's a plot twist involving the doctor as well that may or may not involve him taking something for himself from the body and the cadaver. And while all this is going on, there's like a South American Civil War going on outside. It's really off-the-wall bonkers. But my main issue with this story is how laughably bad the acting and the jump scare sequences are with this person. It's pretty terrible. And there's some really laughably bad body horror effects that just kind of take me out of it. But that's why it's here. All right, so now we're at number 8. And we have episode 2 of the show, which is Holly's House. This was written by Ted Gershony. I gave this as well a 3.75 out of 5 stars. Holly's House is pretty much Child's Play, just more like Big Comfy Couch version of that. So this woman, she's like a puppeteer, but she does robotic puppeteering. And there's this kids show called Holly's House, and the main character is Holly, of course. And throughout the episode, this woman starts to think that maybe Holly's starting to act on her own and have her own personality. And this woman has a fiance and such. And Holly might have a little Charles Lee Ray from Child's Play in her. Let's just say that. It has a little slasher element. It goes kind of mindfucky with it all. And you don't really know where it's going to end up. And then the climax happens, which I thought was really good. But the twist ending to me was really fucking bizarre. I still don't really like the direction they did with the twist ending. But other than that, it was a good episode. Really enjoyed myself with this. All right, at number 7, we have episode 9, and it is called Pool Sharks. And it was written by Alan Kingsburg. And I gave this also a 3.75 out of 5. Pool Sharks, very cut and dry story, but it's actually good character narratives. Essentially, it's about this guy. He is on a witch hunt for this woman who may or may not be associated with the disappearance of his brother or the death of his brother. And when you find out about this woman inside of this pool hall, which essentially is the setting of the whole episode, the woman is pretty much trying to bait men into playing pool with her. And if she wins, she gets to have her way with the man and gets to take him home, whatever. But the woman is a vampire. And this guy has kind of figured out her game and it wants to challenge her. And he says if he wins, he gets to kill her. But if she wins, she gets to kill him, kind of thing. And that's pretty much the whole episode. But it's really good characterization going on. Intriguing characters. My only thing is it's kind of stale in the setting. I know it's to be expected, but it's just kind of stale, and I wish there was more to it. But still, very good episode. And at number 6, rounding out the good, we have episode 13, Glim Glim. This was a story written by F. Paul Wilson, and I also gave this a 3.75 out of 5 stars. This one is a Christmas themed one, and I did not know going into it. It's also kind of like a Contagion episode, which I thought was kind of cool. This daughter, her father, and this random man, they've been like a trio of survivors in this town. They're pretty much the sole survivors, and they have shacked up because it's winter outside inside of the local library. And you kind of discover very quick what's happened to this town. There was an alien sighting, a crash landing, and the alien that arrived brought this parasite that comes within its gut that is totally terrible for humankind, and pretty much wiped out the whole town minus these three survivors who seemingly have an immunity to it. And throughout the whole episode, they kind of think that the alien's up top, and they think that they have to kill the alien, but this little girl kind of forms a bond with it, and you realize through the perspective of the alien that the alien might be trying to work on an antidote and learn English to communicate with these survivors that, hey, if I can get your blood, I can make an antidote. And you have this, turmoil perspective going on, which I really dug, and there's some commentary about that too. And the story ends up in a very sad, fucked up place. So yeah, but my only issue with it, really, is that I just kind of wish there was more background story, shared by the characters of how they got to this and all that. And, I'm not a big fan of the alien design. I think it looks kind of fucking goofy. It kind of takes me out of it. But yeah, that's why it's here. So it's still a very good episode. Not very good, but still good. Okay. Now in the top 5, we are going to have the very good category and then end off with the great. Very good has 3 episodes. And I'll start off with number 5 with episode 20. And it's called The Cocoon, which was written by Edith Swenson. And I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is definitely one of Edith Swenson's better stories, and I definitely like this more than The Vampire Hunter. There's something about this story that really got to me. You have this woman, she's in a hospital bed. She has no memory of who she is. She's like a Jane Doe. But there's something odd about her. And this woman who has I think a husband or that goes to the hospital, works at the hospital or something, she's like a psychic. And she has these visions of this woman who's a Jane Doe, and she sees that, it goes so far back in time, and you get this impression that she's been with all these famous rich people throughout history, but there's something supernatural about her, let's just say that, and she requires the blood of pretty much men to live on as long as she has, right? And there's something involving her hair that gives her the power to do all this. And there's some cheating subplot with the guy that at the hospital and the woman Jane Doe and all that too. That's kind of weird and out of left field. Yeah, I thought it was a really entertaining story. The only reason why I put out a 4 out of 5 stars is that, I do think that the ending, I think the final 5 minutes didn't wrap up where I wanted to see it. Even though I like the twist they did with the Jane Doe woman, I don't like the actual ending of it. It just loses me a little bit, unfortunately. But it is what it is. At number 4, we have episode 12, Fool's Gold. This was written by Michael Reeves, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars as well. Fool's Gold stars Jeff Conaway. I don't know if he's still alive. I think he might be. He might not be. But he was in the early 1980 the classic musical movie Grease. And I thought this episode was very entertaining. You have these 3 main characters. You have these 2 miners and this woman that are down below this area, and they come across a hole in the wall. Or one of these miners have kind of perished, right? And they peer through this hole in the wall that this miner created and see nothing but gold inside it. And they think that they're going to get rich very quick. But very shortly, they uncover this creature that's like a troll hiding in there trying to protect its gold. And the whole episode is them trying to contemplate with each other, is it safe? Should we just leave now? Or should we keep pushing and try to get this gold? And some ideas work over the other. They have to do some convincing. People get injured, people get hurt, but they're doing all of this to get the better, get some edge in life. They're doing this to get some money so they can make themselves into something, and that's the commentary starting to talk about. And where the episode ends up is really freaking dark. The concept with the troll is really cool. There's some powers he can do, like if he touches you, you like start to burn. Really, really good effective stuff. And I think the monster design was really good. So hats off to them for this episode. Just kind of takes me out. Some areas is like, you get to that predictable territory and all that. So yeah, it is what it is, but still my fourth favorite from this season. And to round off the very good, we have episode 8, which is Sleeping Dragon. This was a story written by Michael Reeves, another one that he wrote. And I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, Sleeping Dragon definitely had a movie quality to it. My only negatives with it is kind of like the monster design itself and some loose shit, especially in the beginning. But still a very creepy concept. So this guy, this attractive woman, and this doctor have kind of like found like this fossilized, I don't know, flying saucer of sorts. And it dates back all the way back to like prehistoric times. And they want to open it up to see what's inside, because if they can get like the edge on all of this, on the scientific discovery and all that, they could be famous and rich. But messing around with it, they accidentally wake up whatever's inside of it, which has been pretty much deliberately put to sleep for millions of years. And this thing comes alive and does some damage, let's just say. And it's pretty suspenseful, and it has a great climax and finale. Like I said, pretty much those are only my main issues with it. This is a very well-produced episode. Like I said, there's some movie quality about it. I don't know how to explain it, but very good, very good. And that kind of also segues into my top 2, which also are pretty much movie quality through and through. These 2 are my absolute favorites from this whole season. At number 2, we have episode 23, Mannequins of Horror. This was a story written by Robert Bloch, and I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Wow, this story was so creepy and creative and just downright effective. I mean, you had this guy who's checked himself into like a mental asylum, and he's like heavily sedated. He's constantly left in his room, but he has like medical background and all that, and he keeps making these clay figurines with like very accurate organs to put inside of them and all of that. And throughout the episode, you get the sense that these mannequins, once he's like finished putting them together, they might be coming alive, and it's really fucking creepy. There's some stop motion effects in here that look fantastic. There's something about the setting of the mental asylum, mental hospital, that really gets to me here, and I think they pulled off. If they filmed this on a set, I'll be shocked, because it looks very real. And you get this like drama dealing with like the doctors trying to figure out how to deal with this man, and is he crazy, or is he actually telling the truth? And it kind of goes into some commentary about sometimes even people that are deemed crazy in society are, overlooked because they may appear so, or anything like that. But yeah, there's some shockingly good stuff in this episode. My only issue is kind of the budget. The budget of it. The story requires a little more that I feel like the episode just couldn't do. So some things happen off screen. Some things haven't aged well in terms of the effects they use. But I would love to see like a remake of this at some point, because this is a fantastic story otherwise. I have no issue with the concept, the story, the acting, performances, or anything. I think it's just the execution on the effects. All right. But that leads me to my number 1. My number 1 favorite episode from Monster Season 1 goes to episode 18, The Match Game. And this was written by Christopher Orville, and I gave this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. To put this into perspective, I think this episode is my second favorite from this show and Tales from the Dark Side combined. Wow, what a star-studded cast. You have Tori Spelling. I forget the guy's name, but he was in Dazed and Confused and Halloween 4. You have the girl who played the main character in Hellraiser. I forget her name. And I'll definitely remember it after this video too, and it's going to annoy me. But she's in this, and she is Ashley Lawrence. Incredible actress. And the main character guy, I recognize him from something, but yeah, all recognizable teen actors here. And the story is so creepy and so up my alley. And it's in a lot of ways probably the most generic story from this season, but still, I would rather come back to this one than all of these other ones combined. There's just something about it. It's so electric. You got to go check this out. But it's about this guy who has this crush on Ashley Lawrence's character and wants to kind of like impress her. And he's agreed to come to this old abandoned house that has a creepy urban legend background associated with it. And he ends up there kind of like on a double date of sorts with these other two people played by the guy from Halloween 4 and Tori Spelling, who, you know, they form a circle and they start to have like this seance-like game going on where they pass around a thing of matches and they have to light a match, and one person will start the story. Once their match goes out, the next person picks it up, you know, with their match. But every time it comes around to this one guy who has a crush on Ashley Lawrence, he's like in a deep trance and he's saying stuff that just seems too accurate to it all. And it's talking about this backstory of this legend about the former homeowner, about how like something tragic happened to him and how he was obsessed with his appearance. And he may or may not be out in the water behind the house. And once the teens finish up the story, you pretty much get, if you've ever seen the movie The House of Seven Corpses, which is like a classic 70s schlockbuster drive-in type of movie, it's pretty much this. There's an undead revenant that comes out of the water to get some revenge because the kids, I guess, know his secret. And that's really my only negative with it. It's like, why does he come back exactly? It's never really established. But he just does, and it's pretty much turns into an 80s slasher for the final portions of it. And I love how tense it is. I love the monster design. I love how just well put together it was. And that's why it was my favorite episode from this season. And it's honestly one of my favorite episodes, or I guess favorite stories associated with the same producers that made Creepshow, Tales from the Dark Side, Monsters. This is up there in my top 5. So yeah, that's my favorite episode from Monsters, and that's my ranking overall of Monsters Season 1. Let me know down in the comment section, what was your least favorite episode? What was your favorite episode? How would you rank these episodes? Did you agree with my takes? Did you not? I'm dying to hear all of that, and love talking about this with you all. I'll see you next time.